and welcome to Fox and Media Digital. My name's Amy, and today I'm joined by Sophie Kennedy, who's Joint Chief Executive Officer at EQ Investors. So, welcome, Sophie. It's great to have you on the channel.
Hi, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, we're joining with you to celebrate Women's Month and International Women's Day ahead of the Summit for Wealth Management, which you will be speaking on our Diversity, Equality and Inclusion panel. And so, just before we dive into some of these themes, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your firm?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my name is Sophie Kennedy. As you mentioned, I'm Joint Chief Executive and also Head of Investment at EQ Investors. We're a sustainable discretionary fund manager with a slightly different ambition to others. We're looking to make sustainable investing mainstream and also be a key contributor to change finance to be a force for good. We work with a range of clients from financial planners and IFAs to charities, foundations, and other corporates. And we manage both model portfolios and also a bespoke service where clients are looking to slightly tailor their portfolios to their specific sustainability preferences.
Fantastic. Thank you for that introduction. Some major overlapping themes there, but just to sort of hone in on DEI a little bit more, why is that important in the wealth management space and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, I lead a wealth management business, and therefore I'm lucky enough to really be able to influence the culture and, in turn, the DE&I across the business. And hopefully, that has an influence in turn across further reach across the industry as a whole. I've got a pretty simple goal to lead the way as a purpose-driven business and evidence to others that actually purpose, profit, and success are all interlinked. Of course, this is looking to maximize the financial performance of the company, but more broadly, my role and motivation really encompasses ensuring our progressive culture, our ethos, and our values remain relevant and leading. And DE&I is absolutely paramount to this. So delighted to be able to share my thoughts today.
Yeah, it's a very timely conversation as well because we've just had Women's History Month, we've had International Women's Day, and yesterday was Mother's Day in the United Kingdom. So, what have you been up to recently, and how has this activity helped with the push for DE&I?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great opportunity this month to celebrate the achievements of women while also educating and raising awareness of what needs to change going forward. We know that we need greater diversity in decision making positions, we need better representation at the table. And as you mentioned, this year, International Women's Day, the focus was on hashtag embrace equity. With the organisers stating that people start from different places, so true inclusion and belonging require equitable action. And I'm a big fan of this, highlighting the difference between equity, which is giving individual support to make sure everyone is on a level playing field, versus this idea of equality, which is about giving everyone the same opportunity. It's nuanced, but it's a really powerful concept for me. I think there's a general move in the right direction with regards to D&I across the industry. It's too slow, but opportunities like this are exactly what are needed to raise awareness and kind of get that acceleration going.
Yeah, you made a good point there about the different levels of action that companies are taking because everyone's at a different step in their journey. What are the first steps that wealth managers can be taking to get started if they're not quite as far as you?
I think it's simple. You need to start by looking within and walk the walk, as they say. I don't think that you can challenge unless you really feel that you're in a good place yourself and that your business is. So, what do we do at EQ? We want an inclusive culture. So we need to be able, we need to be able to enable our colleagues to feel respected and well valued and able to participate in building the culture. We've got a DE&I working group. It focuses on making sure that we have the governance in place to ensure accountability, make sure that we measure our impact and successes, and that we're communicating and telling our story. And I think it's actually that grounding that gives you the ability to drive change from within. The genesis of our inclusive culture in particular stems really from our identity as a B corporation. So for those of you who haven't heard of B Corps necessarily, it's a community of purpose-driven businesses trying to do business in the right way. and every decision that we make is made with all stakeholders in mind. So from what kind of paper supplier we use to investing in our community, and probably most relevant here, our employment policies.
Yeah, you make a good point there because there are different ways that you can weave DE&I strategy into your firm, from a culture point of view, a supplier point of view, but also through the financial products and services themselves. So let's talk about that a little bit because you've touched on some of the things that you're doing as a firm and a culture, but how can wealth managers in particular make sure that they weave this into their actual product offering and their screening process?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So, as a wealth manager, we invest in funds. That's quite typical across the wealth management industry. So it's more around fund selection that we're talking about here, rather than company selection. Um, and there are a few angles. You've got the diversity of fund managers themselves that we can touch on, and their support teams around them. You've got the use of diversity, equality, and inclusion information in fund selection that we can touch on. And then finally, how that information is being used by fund managers to select their companies. And, that works right through the value chain, I guess. In terms of the diversity of fund managers, I'll start with. I've interviewed thousands of fund managers. I started in fund management research, actually, mostly male, but also some females. We know as an industry that we're underrepresented at a women level, at a minority group level, and actually 9 out of 10 fund managers are still male. There's an inherent bias issue there, I think. It's well documented that human behaviours veer towards the known. We favour what we're used to and what we relate to. So given that there are more male fund selectors, it's kind of a given that there are more male fund managers as well. But here, the asset managers really need to take charge. They should be driving a team-based culture from the top down. The culture should be centered on diversity of thought. A good example here would be having a culture that's inclusive enough to support women fund managers take maternity leave. It's a really interesting concept that's been talked about a lot this month. We actually celebrated difference at EQ on International Women's Day, and had a lady who was speaking to us, and she made a really interesting point that if I was working with another person who was a female, youngish, white person, I wouldn't actually seek their opinion when I was making a decision. I would automatically, self-consciously, just think that they agreed with me because we had very similar characteristics. So we really need to be taking that into account when we're building out fund management teams and making sure that we have that diversity of thought, because without that, you don't get the challenge. So that's the one aspect. In terms of how we use D&I information in terms of fund selection, the culture of asset management is absolutely key here, and wealth managers should be weaving due diligence of the actual company culture into their analysis when they're choosing asset managers to partner with and investing in funds. You might have all the process in the world and the kind of perception of a team structure, but how it's culturally implemented and governed is so important. And this is a qualitative addition to your due diligence questionnaire. You could look at metrics, I guess, that are more quant-based, such as staff turnover. If you're seeing a lot of staff turnover, you might think that to be a red flag. So that's how fund selectors should really be thinking about weaving DE&I into their fund selection. And then finally, I guess this is the most talked about, is how fund managers are using diversity, equality, and inclusion metrics when they're analysing or choosing the underlying companies. You will have heard of ESG integration or ESG investing. So that's ensuring that the fund managers are looking at the way in which those companies are operating. What's their stance towards their environmental, their social, their governance factors? And this incorporates the diversity of senior management, as an example, or the governance around how a business operates. And all fund managers should be doing this. It's non-financial information that's integral to making good investment decisions, whether that's taking advantage of opportunities or mitigating risks. So that's interesting. There's also an increase in the number of kind of investment strategies that are focused on diversity or inclusion. It's difficult for fund managers to screen because the data is not really good enough. I think it's difficult for portfolio managers to create a portfolio of these types of investments because there aren't enough of them. It's not something I've looked at in detail, but I know a few examples. There are some index tracking ETFs that are focused on things like gender diversity. There's one on women empowerment, and there's one on women in leadership, where they're looking at board representation. All of these offering kind of broad exposure, I guess, to women-led companies.
That's fantastic. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of things going on out there that can really help firms get started. And you made a good point as well when you said about 9 out of 10 wealth managers being white males. How does that impact the diversity of thought then, and the influence that they have on their DE&I strategies? Because, should they better accelerate this, or do you think it holds them back? And can metrics be a solution to that to help offset these biases that we have at companies?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything you just said. I think that we need more intelligent hiring practices at the asset management level. I don't think that should or needs or could be at the detriment to white males. It just shouldn't. People should be hired on everything that we've typically hired people on. You shouldn't be hiring on kind of certain characteristics, I guess. I think the data will improve in terms of being able to incorporate things like diversity and inclusion into your investment decision making. And I think things are progressing. I think that there's a huge will from the financial industry to progress the change that we're seeing. It's supported by certain initiatives that we can come on to speak about, and there's just as many men allies as there are women coming through from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing firms take really innovative approaches to this as well. We just had Summit for Asset Management Boston last week, and we had a speaker there who was giving a case study on the steps that they've taken to create an inclusive culture that it's so inclusive that it kind of ends up ticking a lot of their DEI boxes and helping make that strategy in practice, by just improving workplace experiences as a whole, and it just makes such a difference, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, quite right.
Well, we'll be able to talk about this a lot more at the Summit for Wealth Management. Obviously, you'll be taking part in your sessions on the day. Maybe by then there'll be even more updates and things to share. But for now, it's been so lovely having you on the channel. So thanks so much, Sophie, for joining.
Thank you for having me, Amy. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget to follow our YouTube channel for more content on the challenges and opportunities in asset management, wealth management, and ESG. And don't forget to give this interview a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button.